Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasul Kareem. So let's carry on with the principle that we've been working with. Before we go into this section of the question, the Masail, remember this is part of Jami al-Saghir. Now there's an usul that we've established, which is Batala Nikahu Thabitun Nasab. So whenever you can affirm the lineage, the nikah remains or becomes invalid. That's the usul. So once you establish that, once you can establish that there's a lineage, then the nikah becomes broken. This establishes for us the lineage is very sacred in Islam. Yeah? The lineage is extremely sacred, and we'll see this principle throughout this video. So let's move on, inshallah ta'ala. Now, there's a few things that you'll have to be familiar with before you read the Arabic text, because a lot of students, they won't know how slavery works, the rules of slavery. But it also shows to us that when we're doing many masail in fiqh, even if you're doing nikah or what we're doing here, the muharramat, the people that you can or can't marry, it assumes that you should also have knowledge of other chapters of fiqh or other masail of fiqh. So without them, sometimes it can become a little bit difficult. So I'm going to take a time out just to show you what's going on here, and that way when we go and dive into the mas'ala, it'll be a little bit easy for you. So let me just change the color of my pen. So what happens is, he is a master and he has a slave girl. She's called a jariya. Now he hasn't had intercourse with her for now, this is assumed, and he has a jariya. Now if he was to have intercourse with her and then she was to have a child, lineage is not automatic. In other words, that child through the jariya is not automatic. He must at the first instance claim it, right? So if she has a baby boy or a baby girl, the lineage to the master is not automatic, and then he must claim it. Once he claims it, she becomes the walad, the mother of the child, and she also becomes what's called the firash. The firash basically means the bed or the ground where, or the place where the father or the master is taking advantage of. And if she was obviously pregnant again, she would be carrying a master's child. But in theory, she's assumed now to be any child that will come now will be ascribed to the father, to the master rather, because he has now made the claim. So that's what I'm writing here. Thereafter, automatically assumed, unless he negates it, unless he says forthright that that's not my child. So I'm going to repeat that one more time because this is really important. So a master has a slave girl, a jariya, and that jariya becomes pregnant and she has a child. That child is not automatically traced back to the master until the master actually makes a claim. Once the master makes a claim, she becomes a walad and a firash. So any child that comes now after, because he's made a claim, will be assumed to be his unless he negates it. If you understand this, and it's quite straightforward, even though this is taken from the chapter of slavery, then every question that we're going to explore right now should, inshallah, make sense to you. So let's begin from here. We'll begin from here. So the author says, وَإِنْ زَوَّجَ أُمِّ وَلَدِهِ وَهِيَ حَامِلٌ مِنْهُمْ. So if he marries off his walad here, and she's pregnant from him, right? Remember, she's a firash now. She's assumed to be carrying his child. So Imam Maghini says, فَالنِّكَاحُ بَاطِلٌ. The nikah is batil. Why? Well, you've been able to ascribe the nasab. The nasab belongs to the master here. That's what he's saying. لأنه فراش لمولاها. She's a firash for her mawla. حتى until يثبت نسب ولدها منه من غير دعوة. Basically what we've just said from here to here, that the nasab will be affirmed to the father even if he doesn't make any claim, because she's a firash for him, because that's what an walad is. Remember, Imam Marginani said it was the walad here. So an walad is after jariya, after he's had a child and he's made a claim that this is my child. Every child will be his unless he negates it. So that's what he's saying. That's what he's mentioning here. لَإِنَّهُ ثَابِتُ النَّسَبِ here. Okay. حتى يثبت نسب ولدها منه من غير أوة. Now, فلو صح النكاح, if we were to allow this nikah to go ahead, so if this person was allowed to marry the Jariya or the Walad rather, لحصل الجمع بين الفراشين. You'd have a jam'a between two firashain because she is the firash for her master, right? But now she's going to become the firash for this person that she's marrying. That can't happen. You can't have jam'a. So for two reasons. One is obviously the nasab has been ascribed to the master because that's what's happening here. The master, if he was to allow her to get married, so he has to, she has to, this has to change. That's all it is. إلا أنه غير متأكد. Now this is a really interesting thing that Imam Al-Ghina says. It's not a strong form of firash. I'll come to that in a moment. حتى ينتفي الولد بالنفع من غير لعان فلا يعتبر ما لم تسب الحمل. And so he says that he can negate it with just saying that this is not my child without any li'an. This is something that we'll cover later on. فلا يعتبر ما لم يتصل بالحمل. And this only comes about when there's no hamal here. So what does this mean or what's going on here? So let's kind of just stop for a moment and take a moment to just reflect, okay? So وإن زوج أم ولده وهي حامل منه. Let's go back to the beginning here. If he was to marry off his walad, we've talked about what a walad is, not a jariya, she's an walad now, and she's pregnant, so she's carrying something in her womb, a child in her womb. The nikah is batil, is invalid, because he is the child that will come out because she's an walad now, not a jariya. We will assume automatically to be the father, so she is a firash for him. Okay, the asal here is that أن شرع النكاح لطلب النسل. Nikah has been prescribed or allowed for the purpose of having a child. Of course, this is how we do cause effect in this diagram here. Okay. والولد من طريق الحكمة فإذا كان الرحم مشغول بولد ثابت النسب. When a slave girl or the walad is pregnant, she's carrying a child in her womb whose nasab we know, it goes back to the master. Kana firashin, she'll become the firash. Okay, so once she becomes a firash for one person, she can't become a firash for this other person. In this case, this person that she might want to marry. فلم يقع محلا لطلب ولد آخر. She can't become a firash for somebody else. فلو جاز النكاح لزم الجمع بين الفراشين. This is what I've said. If you were to allow her to get married when she's carrying in her womb as a firash of her master, you'd have two firash, which wouldn't be allowed. And the Walad is a firash for her mawla. Okay. ألا ترى أن نسب ولدها يثبت من غير دعوة. That if she was to then have a child as an Walad, then that child would be automatically, the lineage would automatically go to the master without him even making a da'wah, without even him making a claim. Because this is how it's understood, this is how the theory of it works. Then he mentioned, like I said here, إلا أنه غير متأكد. Yeah, this is taking out a clause that's taking out, except that from firashim li mawlaha. So when they said firashim li mawlaha here, this is connected to that. Okay. يعني أن الولد فراش لمولاها. The walad is a firash for her mawla. But firash has three types. That's what I've written here. Three types. I haven't written them down, but there are three types of firash, and they are different levels. There's qawi, there's wasat and da'if. So a strong one, a medium one, and a weak one. The strongest one is the one that's in marriage. Firash al-mankuha. When you marry someone, that wife becomes your firash. Yeah, and automatically that child is assumed to be the father's. So if you think about, let me just write it down here. The first one is the qawi, qawi. Which is just normal marriage, and in that one, it's assumed that the child that will come out is of the fathers. Nobody turns around and says, "Oh, you need to do iqrar. You need to claim that this child is yours." It's automatically assumed. That's the first one. Yeah, and you do, and it's not. There's no need for li'an and these sort of things. The second one is the one that we're talking about, which is the middle one, which is the walad. This is like the wasat. So it's kind of, sort of in between, if you like, and this is the firash of the walad. It's a slightly weaker one, And so therefore, because of that, what happens is when you have an walad, so someone that's already given birth to a child, you're the master, that and you claim it, she becomes an walad bila iqrarin. So any child that comes out afterwards will be known to be for the master. Okay. Yes, but he can also negate it. So that's why I said here. See, that's why it's in between, because in the father, in the husband and wife situation, the husband and child comes automatically. It's the father's. Here, the master for the first time must claim the child. That's why it's between. Um, and then after that, any child that comes is his, unless he explicitly says it's not my child. And the third one, the weakest one, if you like, what's called da'if. Here, ضعيف is the فراش الأمة لا يثبت نسب ولدها بلا دعوة. This is the slave girl. The nasab is not affirmed for the child except da'wah. This is what we said. You have to claim it. So all of that is mentioned here. This is all kind of like you're supposed to know all of this in the background. So I'm kind of unpacking it for you. You can watch this video a few times if it doesn't make sense, but it will inshallah ta'ala, because this is a brilliant exposition. Like it assumes and it brings in many different facets of fiqh to really bring out the question of marrying off the walad. Right, so that's done. I don't think I need to add anything else. There's one more thing. فلما كان الفراش غير متأكد في الولد لم يتب الفراش ما لم تصل به الحمل. So because firash is for the walad is not an emphasized form, um, you don't consider firash until she's pregnant. So this only comes into action when she's pregnant. That's why Imam Marghinani has specifically mentioned وهي حامل. Right? He's mentioned that she's pregnant from him. Okay. In other words, جاز تزويجها قبل الحمل. If she wasn't pregnant, you can get her married off. If she wasn't pregnant, then you can get her married off. Okay. And there's no jama between firashain because she's not pregnant. Okay. As for when she is pregnant, you can't get her married when she's pregnant, if you like. Okay. Because she will be considered a firash for her mawla at that moment in time. Okay, so that's fine. Nothing difficult there, I hope, inshallah ta'ala. Let's move on to the next mas'ala, which actually builds on this one. And this is to do with the jariyah. So remember I said here, the jariyah is the slave girl of the master. She's a slave girl. He hasn't had a child with her yet. That's why it's called a jariyah. That's why we have this technical difference. There's a technical difference between both of them, and it has implications. So this is what the author is now exploring after exploring the walad, and he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, okay, وَمَنْ وَطِئَ جَارِيَتَهُ ثُمَّ زَوَّجَهَا جَازَ النِّكَاحِ. Whoever has intercourse with his jariyah, slave girl, and then he gets her married off, the nikah with that person is permitted. لأنها ليست بفراش لمولاش, because she's not firash. She's over here. She's not reached this position. Right? So there's no reason for her to be not allowed to be married off. لأنها ليست بفراش لمولاها فإنها لو جاءت بولد لم يثبت نسبه من غير دعوة. And if she was to come with a child, the nasab would not be affirmed for the master until he claims it. Okay, that's straightforward. That works into the theory that what we've been saying. إلا, however, the ulama say إلا أن عليه أن يستبرأها صيانة لمائه وإذا جاز النكاح. However, they say that it's better for her to wait for a period, just to make sure that the water is separate. That's what they're saying here. That's all they're saying. Okay. ومن وتجارية جاز النكاح لأن that's fine. We talked about that. فإن لو جاء بولد لم يثبت نسبه من المولى من غير دعوة. Remember we said here the da'wah has to be claimed from the jariyah. إلا أن عليه, that the mawla should keep her free for like a period to make sure she's not pregnant. صيانة لمائه, to protect the water of the master, to keep them separate. Now there's a question here which is very interesting, and I've kind of posed it here. Why wait one period? Because normally we are told in the Quran when you give talaq that you should wait for 3 period or 3 period of purity, salasata quru. And the answer to that is very, very fascinating. It's based on a certain principle in usul al-fiqh that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about talaq, He mentions 3 quru, salasata quru, 3 period of purity. Now that's mentioned istihsanan, right? Allah mentions this out of istihsan. In Hanafi fiqh, this is called istihsan. Istihsan means you're not allowed to do qiyas on it. It's based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Because the whole idea, the ulama tell us, is that the reason a woman is told to wait until she's gone through a period is that we know she's not pregnant for somebody else. But that can happen in 1 period. But in the Quran, Allah says when it comes for talaq, you should give 3. So why is it that she only needs to give 1 here? The reason for 1 is that when the Quran has given 3, that's called out of istihsan, and because we can't extend that, and the idea of istihsan is very minimalist. You don't add more than what's reached you, and in that context, is specifically talking about talaq. Here, you just need to give 1. You don't need to make it 3 because that's specifically mentioned for that. For example, if you think about the kuf, wiping over the soft, that's istihsan. That's because the hadith that's reached us is very, very strong, is mutawatir, and we don't do qiyas upon it. We don't extend it to new cases. We stick to that particular case. For example, tayammum, when it comes to doing tayammum when you don't have water and you can't do wudu, because for the Hanafis, tayammum is kind of like it purifies, just like water does. You can use tayammum for many prayers. So for example, if I did tayammum for dhuhr and I still don't find water and it's asr time, I can pray asr with the same tayammum. The Shafi is interesting. They have a different conceptualizing, and for them tayammum is out of necessity. So in the same case, if I did tayammum for dhuhr and I don't find water and it's asr time, I'd have to do tayammum again. This applies in many questions. For example, when it comes to funeral prayer, janaza, Eid salat, because for the Hanafi there's no qada. So if you miss Eid prayer or you miss the funeral prayer, janaza, then there's no qada for it. So because of that, if you're running late for the janaza prayer or the Eid prayer and you don't have time to do wudu, even though there's water there, you can do tayammum and join the prayer. For the Shafi'is, because you can do qada of it, as I understand it, they say no, you still have to do wudu. So again, how you understand conceptualizations of things impacts the particular masail. That's by the by. I've just mentioned that just to kind of get you to think about it. But I thought it was interesting because he says that you have to do bari, not wait for 3 periods, right? It's just 1 period, and to protect the water, because that's istihsan. And the thing with istihsan is you only apply it to the extent that's necessary. So Jum'ah prayer is an istihsan prayer, and that's why for Imam Abu Hanifa is very minimalist. We don't add things to the prayer because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam performed a Friday prayer, and it's a special prayer which doesn't fit into the patterns of the other prayers, if that makes sense. Alright, so this is that discussion done. Then we move on to this one. وَإِذَا جَازَ النِّكَاحِ, if the nikah is wajib, allowed, فَلِلزَّوْجِ أَنْ يَتَهَا قَبْلَ الْإِسْتِبْرَاءِ عِنْدَ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ وَأَبِي يُوسُفَ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. So when the nikah is permitted, then the husband can have intercourse with her before the 1 waiting period, if you like, right? According to Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf. Why is this? So there's this thing that it's good to wait, but he doesn't have to wait. And the idea is very, very simple. All it is once you've done nikah to someone, there should be no reason to stop this happening. There should be no delay for intercourse. There should be, the whole point of nikah is to allow for intercourse, to allow you to have a child. There's no reason to wait. That's the argument being made, right? By Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Yusuf rahimahullahu ta'ala. That's what they're saying here. Imam Muhammad says, لا أحب له أن يتها. I don't prefer that he has intercourse with her, even though he can, قبل أن يستبرأ, until she's had that period of waiting. Because لأنه احتمل الشغل بماء المولى, because there's a possibility that the water might be mixed with the water of the Mawla, the master, and so he should wait. He says kashira, he should wait just like when you buy a slave. The basic idea is that when you buy a slave, or if you buy any item, if you think about it, the seller is not obliged to tell you what he was doing with the item before, right? So if he sold your car, there's no need for him to tell you, for example, what he was doing the day before with the car, right? You get the car, you buy it. And the same thing here, that there's no need for the master to tell you what he was doing with a slave girl the day before when he sold her. But it's possible that she might be pregnant. So Imam Muhammad seems to be saying that you should wait just to be on the safe side, because she might have had intercourse with him before he sold it to you. The Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Abu Yusuf say, look, the fact that you've allowed nikah, the fact that you've given jawaz of nikah, means that she's farid from the Mawla. She's no longer the Mawla's property. She's your property. And so you don't need to say to her, oh, you should stay away, istihbaban or wujuban. There's no reason for you, because once you've done nikah, intercourse is permitted. There's no need to delay. There's no reason for delay, because it cause and effect, what we've been talking about throughout this series. Okay. And then you have to respond to Imam Muhammad. بخلاف الشراء لأنه يجوز فعل الشغل. So they say that even when it comes to buying and selling, that's allowed. Even then, it's just allowed. You can sell it. So why do you need to convolute it by adding certain conditions? Okay. I think that's all I need to mention. I hope if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, inshallah ta'ala, and I'll be happy to take them. I hope you found it useful. This is a beautiful case that brings in lots of things: usul, sabitul nasab, walad, jariya, pregnancy, different types of impediments, qawi, wasat, da'if, ihtisan comes in, cause and effect comes in, lots of things that are going on that allow you to really unpack this mas'ala. If you know this really well, it'll help you a lot in unpacking lots of masail later on, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.